Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto becomes the demon lord of monster girls and Pokegirls and got Harem Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Our story starts in a large forest near a very worn down looking shack. In front of this shack is a 13-year-old blonde-haired boy could be seen. This boy was dressed in a horrendous and bright orange and blue jumpsuit that would make the sun cringe in sheer fear. This boy had tan skin that looked to have been blessed by the sun. His face was rather round and chubby, almost like a tomato. Sitting on each side of his face, to be specific on each cheek, was a whisker-like mark, reminding you of a fox or some canine in many ways. On his forehead was blue pair of goggles could be seen. He had the bluest eyes anyone would ever see. This boy is our main character and his name is Naruto Uzumaki. He's out here on this night because he had stolen a certain forbidden scroll from the cage vault. He had done so by the request of his sensei Mizuki. Mizuki had told Naruto that if he could steal the forbidden scroll and learn a jutsu from it then he'd pass a secret exam and become a genin. Of course Naruto didn't realize that Mizuki had tricked him and that his actions could be considered high treason. Naruto, eager to pass and learn a cool jutsu, opened the scroll and started to look through the many jutsu on it. He scowled, spotting the first jutsu. It was clone jutsu, the jutsu that had caused him to fail the exams earlier. He skipping it kept moving until he blinked, spotting his name. He touching it and pushing some chakra into his name, blinked when two scrolls appeared along what looked like a very weird looking kunai. The kunai was curved and had 3 strange holes in it. Ignoring the kunai for now, he picked up the first scroll, which was yellow, black and white. Opening it up, he blinked as it said, "Dear Naruto, I'm so sorry for placing such a heavy burden on your shoulders. I know that you probably hate me, and if you did I would understand. As you most likely know by now, the Kyuubi no Kitsune is sealed inside of you and your its Jinchuriki. My name is Minato Namikaze and I'm your father. You see, on the night of your birth the Kyuubi was unsealed from your mother and forced to attack the village. I had no choice but to seal it inside of you, otherwise it would have destroyed the village. So I called upon the power of the Shinigami to help me split it up and seal one half inside of me, while the other half went inside of you. Normally this would kill the person doing it, but I wasn't human." Naruto stopped reading as tears fell from his blue eyes and hurt radiated from his very soul. He had just found out the reason why he was so hated and despised by most of the village. He had even found out who his father was, and the man had been the one who sealed said reason inside of his stomach. He was also very upset as the old cage had lied to him about not knowing who his parents were. Shaking his head, he continued to read the letter. You see, my true name is Persephone and I'm the Greek goddess of the spring and seasons. I came to this side of the world through the favors I was owed. I was shifted into the Minato form and eventually met and fell in love with your wonderful mother. To you I leave my mansion and all of the jutsu I've created over my life here. Now I'm afraid I must wrap this letter up as I can feel my soul being pulled back to my part of the world. If you have any questions about me, feel free to ask Kakashi Hatake, my last living student, and he should answer any lingering questions you may have. Watch out for the Uchiha clan and a man in an orange mask. Again, I don't blame you if you hate me. With love, your two-san Minato Namikaze, the Yondaime Hokage." Naruto finished with this letter, turned to the one that was red, blue and purple. Bracing himself, he opened it and started to read. Dear my precious Masumi-chan. This threw Naruto for a loop as he was damn sure he was a male, not a female. Shaking his head, he got back to reading. I'm so sorry, my one and only child. I'm sorry you're most likely suffering because of your idiot father's decision to seal that massive ball of fur into you. I'm sorry I can't be there to tuck you in at nights, to read you stories, to make you feel loved and wanted. I'm sorry for the misery you've most likely been put through. But most importantly, I'm sorry for sealing away your gender so that you'd be safe from the vile thing known as rape. My name is Kushina Namikaze ne Uzumaki and I'm your Ka-chan. The night you were born was the most wonderful night of my life, but as you know, the stupid fox was unsealed by a masked man pretending to be Madara Uchiha. I'm sure your father has already told you to never trust an Uchiha. Well, I'm reinforcing it. Never trust an Uchiha, and if possible stay as far away as possible from them. Anyway, you were actually born a girl, Naruko A. Namikaze. Your middle name is Amelia, by the way. Now I technically died on the night you were born, as the stupid ball of fur stabbed me through my stomach and I was already weak from giving birth to you and having it extracted. To tell you the truth, I'm not dead. You see, I'm from a different universe and my Kushina form was supposed to be temporary anyway. I'd give it 13, maybe 14 more years before it would have faded. You see, my real form is a creature known as a Pokegirl, not just any normal Pokegirl. No, I am a legendary Pokegirl. My name in this form is Carrie, the legendary volcano mistress Pokegirl, and I am kinda the shit in my original dimension. Now baby, this ties into you as you are the only child to ever be born by a legendary Pokegirl. You are also half Pokegirl, half goddess. I didn't have the time to figure out your elements or even your type. I do know this though, the kunai I left you will unlock your full power and your heritage will be brought forward. I'm not sure how the bullshit you were put through by this village will affect you when you release your heritage, but I do know that if my theory is correct, then once you unleash it, your father's 2 infamous jutsu should come easy to you and you should gain unique qualities. In the mansion left to you, I have left you every jutsu I have ever come across and most of my original jutsu. I even left all of my books and scrolls on Fuinjutsu or the art of seals for you. Remember that I will always love you no matter what and that you're the princess of the Uzumaki and Namikaze clans. Be strong and find strong mates. Never trust an Uchiha and use that beautiful mind I gave you. Love eternally, your mother Kushina Namikaze. P.S. Beware of your perverted godfather Jiraiya, and the man most likely taking care of you Sarutobi Hiruzen is also a pervert. If you become a pervert, don't be as open as those two about it and never ever read that smut Jiraiya calls literature. Naruto finished with this letter was confused as hell, not knowing what a Pokegirl was, but couldn't stop the happy tears from spilling from his eyes. He then, setting his eyes on the weird-looking kunai, picked it up and truly inspected it. It was without a doubt unique, as it was mostly blade and curved with 3 large holes being part of said blade's design. It was also a sickly yellow, almost the same color as that cream Kornayame sometimes tried to get him to eat. The hilt was barely existent as the kunai was mostly blade. He had no clue how to even use this thing, but his mom left it to him. Putting it in his back pocket, he went back to trying to learn a jutsu from the Forbidden Scroll. He sighed and decided to learn the stupid clone jutsu. He blinked as he quickly learned the shadow clone jutsu. He then learned the kunai and shuriken shadow clone jutsu. He then moved down and blinked, finding a jutsu called Musamasu Uchigawa no Monsuta Jutsu. Awake the inner monster, it had a few hand signs and he easily copied them. He would then work on the clone jutsu for a while, not knowing that life was about to change for him in a great way. Mizuki's betrayal, awakening, and genin. 2 hours later, Naruto, having mastered the kunai and shuriken shadow clone jutsu, blinked when Iruka Yumino, his favorite teacher so far, burst from the bushes and screamed, "What are you doing stealing the Forbidden Scroll, idiot?" Naruto blinked and asked, "Wasn't stealing the Forbidden Scroll part of the secret exam?" Iruka blinked several times and asked, "What are you talking about?" Naruto sighed and explained what Mizuki had told him to Iruka. Iruka narrowed his eyes and said, "Naruto, you've been tricked, as there is no secret exam." Naruto, hearing this, felt his eyes widened and then scowled as once again someone had used him to their advantage. He gained wide eyes when Iruka suddenly tackled him to the ground and he saw several kunai and shuriken sail over the 2 of them. He looked up and scowled, spotting Mizuki, who said, "Damn you, Iruka, I was so close to taking down the demon." Iruka, glaring at Mizuki, asked, "Why are you doing this, Mizuki?" The silver-haired man snorted and said, "Because I'm getting paid good money to retrieve that stupid scroll from this village." Iruka growled and pulled out a kunai as he said, "You'll get the Forbidden Scroll over my dead body." Mizuki snorted and pulling out his own kunai said, I outclass you Iruka, and after I kill you I'll take out the demon and move on. The two Chunin then clashed and Naruto scowled as Mizuki was obviously talking about the Kyuubi sealed inside of him, but the damn coward hadn't actually said anything about the fox. 20 minutes later and Mizuki could be standing over a defeated Iruka. Laughing, the silver-haired traitor said, You really suck Iruka. He then turned to Naruto and with a wickedly stupid idea in mind asked, Hey Naruto, want to know a secret? Naruto blinked and nodded eagerly. Mizuki, like the idiot he is, then spilled the beans about the Kyuubi being sealed inside of Naruto and then went on to inform Naruto and Iruka that he was working for the snake Sannin Orochimaru. Naruto, hearing this, snorted as the traitor had just confirmed some of the info in both of the letters he had read. Naruto then, making the ram hand sign, said, Shadow Clone Jutsu. Jaws dropped when a huge cloud of smoke appeared. When it cleared, Mizuki took several steps back as he was trapped in a sea of orange and blue. Naruto, knowing that he had just created a lot of clones, pointed at Mizuki and said, Attack. The clones charged at Mizuki and started to beat the man away from Iruka. Naruto didn't pay attention to Iruka though, as he was ordering clones to toss kunai and shuriken at Mizuki and do the other clone jutsu they had learned. The clones quickly followed his attack plan. Naruto ignored this as he went through the necessary hand signs for the other jutsu he had learned. He, finishing it and pushing a massive amount of chakra through his body, called out, Kinjutsu, Musamasu Uchigawa no Mansuda Jutsu. A huge light engulfed his body as his chakra started to char the earth around him. Naruto, gritting his teeth through the pain, screamed when thick murderous red chakra poured out of his body and he could hear the cursing of a demonic female voice in the back of his head. Naruto screamed when the two chakra colors combined into one, becoming a thick and lovely purple. Naruto then felt his body start to change slightly. His blue eyes shifted until they were purple and 3 golden petals appeared around the slitted pupil. The hair grew slightly as it became shoulder length and turned platinum blonde. Black lines formed around each eye, looking much like jagged lightning marks. His fingernails grew out until they became powerful and deadly-looking claws. The body gained the muscle his intense training was supposed to give him. Finally, the goggles adorning his forehead fell to the ground as small horns appeared. Naruto, feeling an intense power stirring inside of him, licked his suddenly dry lips, knowing that this was the power his Ka-chan had been talking about. He, reaching into his back pocket, pulled out the kunai his mother had left him. Staring down at it, he pondered if he really wanted to use this thing and how to use it for said matter. He then felt an evil and malicious chakra coming from where his clones were battling, distracting Mizuki. Biting his lip, he knew that using the kunai would change his life more than it had already been changed, but the question that was troubling him was, is he ready for such a change? His eyes then landed on Iruka, and they hardened as the man was like a big brother to him. When his resolve hardened, he was finally able to hear the soft yet soothing voice that was coming from the kunai. It was telling him to stab himself in the heart with it and leave only the pommel exposed. Naruto took a deep breath and plunged the weapon into his heart, ignoring Iruka's cry. He only felt pain for about 5 seconds before it was replaced by the warmest sensation ever. His body then erupted in a pillar of light that made the entire skyline brighten as if the sun had risen. Iruka, being close to said pillar, felt the intense power it was putting out and had to shield his eyes. The surviving clones were also wrapped up in said pillar of light and Mizuki was forced to shield his eyes. Inside of said pillar of light, Naruto was going through another transformation. His short height shot up until it was no longer 4 foot 9 inches but 6 feet 3 inches tall. The hair finally grew until it reached the middle of the back and it became a lovely shade of silver. The skin paled dramatically until it could give Orochimaru's skin a run for its money. The whisker marks ran together and became 2 black lines connecting to the previous black lines. The lips plumped up and became extremely kissable. The body became more feminine as DD cup grew where the previous male chest had been. The thickened until it was nice and plump. The heels became arched and became like paws, but still retained their human shape and form. 8 angelic wings grew out of the back and quickly gained an holy glow. The small horns from before grew in size until they were now a prominent feature of the face. The next final thing to happen was for a thick spaded tail to appear that had sharp ridges running up it. The last thing to happen was the petals in the eyes to fully form a gorgeous flower that glowed with a supernatural light. Naruto inside of this light could feel an immense power flowing from her new body. She then letting the pillar fade set her eyes on the wide-eyed and shell-shocked Mizuki. Snarling she glared at him and all of the eyes on Mizuki started to glow a bright blue. Suddenly Mizuki started to scream in pure agony. The reason why? Well, how would you feel if your mind was bombarded by constant psychic attacks with enough force to turn you into a mindless robot? The girl formerly known as Naruto just continued to glare at the man as everything he knew filled her head. She stopping her glare scowled as the man was a sick and twisted bastard. Lifting her hand into the air she watched as Mizuki was wrenched into the air. She then summoned a flame so hot it was burning the very air and tossed it at Mizuki's. His screams could be heard all the way in the fire capital. When the flames finally stopped, Iruka tossed his lunch as what remained of Mizuki were burned and charred bones. The girl snorting turned to him and the forbidden scroll. She floating both, shut her eyes and teleported the two of them directly to the Hokage's office. Sarutobi feeling his jaw scrape the ground was shocked at what just happened. The girl crossing her arm under her bosom and ignoring the fact that she was floating in the air and said, "You already know what happened, Hokage-sama, but allow me to inform you the things you don't know, and I will be moving to the home left to me by my parents, and if you even try to deny me I'll go join Kumo." Sarutobi hearing this gulped and gaining a serious face said, "Please explain." She did so, and by the time she had finished Sarutobi was feeling as old as dirt. Reaching into his desk he handed her both a headband and a set of specially designed keys. He sighing said, "I know you can't forgive or forget the fact that I kept these secrets from you yet, but I hope someday you will see that I was only trying to protect you. I will also wait until you're ready to announce your heritage to the village." The girl hearing this snorted and said, "Stop acting like the senile old goat you are, Gigi. Of course I know you did what you did to protect me. I just don't forgive you yet. As for the people of this village, they can kiss my for all I care. My last name shouldn't change how these people treat me. The only people who treated me like I was a human being were you, Ayame-chan, Tsuki Gigi, Iruka-sensei, my creepy stalker Hinata Hyuga, and crazy snake lady." She then remembering what her mom and dad wrote her said, "Gigi, if you put me on the same team as Sasuke Tem I will kill him. Someone of his clan was the reason the Kyuubi attacked the village, hence they cannot be trusted at all. So unless you want Konoha to be without their precious Sharingan, I suggest you not put us on the same team." She then turned around and was about to leave when Sarutobi said, "The team placements are in 2 weeks. Be at the academy at 9 o'clock in the morning. Until then I suggest you train or relax." She nodded and said, "I'll most likely be getting used to my new powers and this new body. By the way, I'll be going by Naruto from now on and I'll let you decide the last name." She then floated out of the room. Sarutobi watching her float out of the room puffed on his pipe twice and said, "You'll be going by Namikaze as that's your name. Naruko Amelia Namikaze, a name destined for greatness." He then setting his eyes on the shell-shocked Iruka said, "Go home Iruka, get some rest as you have 2 weeks off and I get the feeling you're gonna need it." Iruka numbly nodding used the classic leaf shushin to teleport home. This left the old cage with his cursed eternal enemy, the paperwork. He glaring at said stacks of paper said, "You will not best me tonight, you vile creature." The ANBU hidden in the shadows sweat dropped as their cage had lost it. Their eyes widened when they swore the paperwork gave out an evil chuckle. Many rubbed their eye slots and decided that they needed to get some rest. Exclamation mark. Naruko, still floating, was following the directions on the map she had been given to her new home. She knew that she was floating now, as she had noticed that her feet weren't touching the ground and she couldn't feel the grass or dirt underneath her feet. She had looked down and noticed that she was floating. She had at first been curious and wanted to test out how far she could float, but realized that she should probably do that within the confines of her own home. So she had created a shadow clone and sent it to her old apartment. It got all of her stuff and left without hesitation. She had all of her stuff packed in her toad-shaped pack and it was slung over her right shoulder. She, finding herself feet away from the Inuzuka clan compound, turned the map and said, "Okay, I'm lost." She blinked, hearing sniffing. Looking down, she felt her eyes set on a hyena pup. This confused her until she heard a voice she was very familiar with say, "Damn it, where the hell did that damn abomination go?" She, curious, slid her hands and the bushes moved to reveal Kiba Inuzuka along with someone Naruto could only presume to be his elder sister. Both Inuzuka blinked and looked at her. Kiba, confused at first, then sniffed the air and recognized her scent. He, giving her an ugly look, asked, "What are you doing here, Dobi?" Naruto scowled and said, "None of your damn business, Kibbles." Kiba growled, hearing his cursed nickname, while Hana smirked, not knowing this nickname. Both Inuzuka blinked when the hyena pup nuzzled her floating foot. Naruto, hearing its thoughts, floated the pup up and stared her in her black eyes. Naruto then, reaching out with one of her hands, scratched the pup behind her ears, ignoring the wide eyes of the two Inuzuka. The eyes widened even more when the hyena pup nuzzled her hand and barked in glee. Kiba said, "Holy shit." Naruto, confused, asked, "Why are you two so shocked?" Hana, staring at the pup, said, "The hyena pup has mauled everyone that tried to bond with it and almost killed the last person who tried to do what you're doing right now." Naruto, hearing this, looked at the pup, who was in a state of bliss as she scratched it behind the ears. Hana then said, "You need to come with us and talk to Mom." Naruto blinked several times and asked, "Why?" Kiba sighed and asked, "Don't you remember my story about how me and Akamaru became partners?" Naruto shook her head and said, "No, as a certain pink-haired girl we both know decided to hit me because I didn't pay attention to a certain duck-haired emo." Kiba chuckled and said, "Yeah, that sounds about right. Come on, I'll fill you in on the way." Naruto sighed and said, "Fine." 30 minutes later, Naruto found herself floating in front of Sume Inuzuka, the clan head of the Inuzuka clan and Kiba's mom. Sume was just staring at her and it was getting on Naruto's nerves. Sume, shaking her head, said, "It figures that Kushina's pup would show up and form a bond with the one pup we've been having trouble with." Naruto blinked several times and asked, "You knew my mom?" Sume gained a proud smirk on her face as she nodded. She, walking over to the mantel, grabbed a photo and handed it to Naruto. Said girl, looking at the picture, could see a much younger Sume standing beside a red-haired girl and a girl that reminded Naruto of Hinata, all of them making a silly face in front of a black-haired woman. Naruto easily identified the red-haired girl as her mom and she asked, "You were on the same genin team as her?" Sume nodded and said, "Yep. We were Team 9 and were the best full kunoichi team ever." Naruto smiled at this and handed the picture back. Sume, placing it back, said, "The hyena pup is now yours. Take good care of her and if you need help feel free to stop by." Naruto, looking down at the hyena pup that hadn't left her side, smiled and floated the girl up. She, staring her new partner in the eyes, asked, "So what is your name?" The hyena pup barked and Naruto giggled and asked, "Amelia." The pup nodded. Naruto, now laughing, said, "Funny, that's my middle name." The pup somehow smiled at her. She, turning to the smirking Sume, asked, "Say you wouldn't know how to get to the Namikaze compound, would you?" Sume, still smirking, said, "Of course I do. I was your mom's best friend after all and was even at the wedding." Naruto then, giving her big glossy eyes and a big pout, asked, "Could you lead me there?" Sume laughed and said, "Sure pup, follow me." Naruto cheered at this and happily floated behind Sume, her new partner Amelia trotting behind the two of them. Naruto, after Sume lead her to her new home, was exploring the place, and getting familiar with its twists and turns. So far she could say without a doubt that it was much larger than her old home. She, walking into the master bedroom, blinked, spotting a very strange orange device with a note on it. She, grabbing the note and ignoring when Amelia climbed on the bed and started rolling in the sheets, read it. She smiled as apparently her mother had used this thing to scan herself every 6 months and it would tell her everything she needed to know. Picking it up, she scanned herself and blinked when it said, Blessed Demoness, the Greater Demon Pokegirl. Type: Near Human. Element: Psychic, Magic, Dark, Flying, Varies, Infernal, Fire, Blessed, Ground, Blessed. Frequency: Very Rare. Diet: Special. Role: Commanders, Schemers. Libido: Average. Strong versus Infernal, Normal, Magic, Psychic, Ghost, Varies. Weak versus Celestial, Fighting, Bug, Varies. Attacks: Negative Aura Burst, Energy Drain, Nightshade, Energy Blade, Hypnotic Gaze, Teleport, Dominate, Call Me Queen. Others vary by type. Enhancements: Enhanced Reflexes X5, Enhanced Strength X4, Enhanced Speed X4, Enhanced Endurance X4, Longevity. Others vary by type. Evolves: Demon Goddess Dawn Stone, Dark Queen Classified, 2 Dark Stones Mizuku Classified, 2 Dusk Stones. Evolves from Diamond Mana Crystal, Fallen Angel, Further Trauma plus Dark Stone. A blessed demoness is truly something to be feared as the elements she gains put her on an entire new level than before. The strange thing about all blessed demonesses are that they always float, no matter if they have the psychic element or not. This phenomenon has baffled researchers and tamers for a while now. Thankfully only 1 or 2 blessed demonesses have been noticed and neither have yet to go feral. One thing to be noticed is that the one of the blessed demoness is said to be the daughter of the legendary Pokegirl Carrie. This is frightening news and if proven true could be very dangerous. Thankfully this Pokegirl is far out of the reaches of anyone who would seek to use her for their own deeds. Naruto blinked and looked at herself. The thing was correct and she did look nearly human, except she had 8 white angel-like wings and horns. Shrugging, she set the thing down and decided to get some sleep. She'd start testing her new powers and her apparent attacks after she ate breakfast. She, curling up in a ball, didn't even realize that she was still floating but was now floating over the master bed. The next day after eating breakfast, Naruto was floating in her backyard glaring at the training dummies and her smart clones. Apparently when not in battle they acted like and enjoyed ignoring her orders. She, shaking her head, turned back to the dummies and decided to try out her psychic attacks on the dummies. She, focusing on them, smiled when they started to tremble and crack. She blinked when one of her clones focused on the same dummy and set it on fire. Glaring at said clone, she asked, "What the hell is wrong with you?" It snickered and said, "I was just testing out our fire skills." She scowled and wondered if this is what Iruka had to put up with her in class. She hoped not, as she would owe the man a lot of sake if she was. She then briefly wondered if she was insane for doing this. She then realized that all shinobi and kunoichi were insane by trade and she was no different. Shaking her head, she got back to her training, ignoring her clone doing their own things. She failed to notice one of said clone float outside of the home with all of her prank supplies. She also failed to notice 2 of her clones head inside of the home with Amelia. One of her clones actually started to juggle kunai and other sharp objects using her psychic element. This last one was actually helpful, as doing this little juggling would increase the power of her telekinesis. 3 hours later and Naruto blinked when memories came back to her. The clone that had walked outside of the compound with pranking supplies had gone ape shit crazy, as it had pranked almost the entire village, with the ramen stand, the top floor of the Hokage Tower and the Inuzuka clan compound being exempt from the pranks. She blinked again when her 2 clones inside dispelled, relaying the info they had gained back to her. The 2 clones had gone inside and started to read the library left to her. Apparently her mom had a hell of a lot of fire attacks, mainly jutsu, but had left her the info on how to do some of her signature Pokegirl attacks. The clones had started to learn Flame Floor, Fire Sword, Fire Blast, Fire Wind, Flame Thrower, and Flame Tower. They had actually learned most of them and it was the last 2 that had given them trouble. The 2 clones had also bathed and fed Amelia, who was now slumbering peacefully under the kitchen table. Naruko then smiled as with her ability to abuse the hell out of the shadow clone jutsu, she would be able to cut down her training time by at least half. She then created even more clones and said, "You girls know what to do." The clones nodded and split up to accomplish different things. Some of them even decided to head to the public library to expand their minds, as it was also training for her psychic element. She giggled as 3 more clones had found an empty room in the back of the compound and had turned this into Prank Command's central laboratory. She felt only slightly bad for anyone caught in her future pranks as she now had a full garden of plants, money to purchase needed supplies and even her own personal poop supply. Suddenly all of her clones started to cackle evilly, which made the ones out and about in the streets gain strange looks. 2 days later, Naruko was drenched in her own sweat as she was trying to create her own jutsu. She had, after reading her dad's notes about making jutsu, sent a clone to buy herself a chakra affinity paper. The clone of course had to get the help of Iruka as the old man had yet to announce her heritage. She still didn't care, but after getting the paper, she had tested herself and had smiled as it had split into 7 pieces. It had shown she had an affinity to 4 out of the 5 elemental affinities, with her not having water, but she did have lightning, fire, earth and wind. The other 3 pieces had shown her Pokegirl elements. The first one had glowed blue and then started to fold itself, signaling her psychic element. The second sheet had turned pitch black and almost faded into nothing. The third sheet had literally almost turned into a sheet of glitter. This had made Naruko sweat drop as apparently her magic element was going to be more for show. She had after that started working on creating jutsu for each of her elements. Yes, she even made jutsu for her magic element. So far she had created at least 20 jutsu for each of her elements. The one that gave her the most problems though were her lightning and dark elements. She had, after reading as much as she could about the dark, had created a few clones and sent them to either pester Shikamaru until he helped her or use the puppy dog eyes on his mom until she helped. Either way it was win. The lightning one was more difficult to tackle as it was wild and untamed, kinda like how her hair used to be, or how Emilia was when it came to bath time. This thought suddenly made Naruko stop as her much smarter brain started turning. She face-palmed as she had just figured out what she had been doing wrong. She had been trying to tame the lightning, when really she should just let it go. She instantly went through hand signs and smiled when the very air became charged with electricity. Lifting her hands up she said, "Lightning style, cry of the Raijin jutsu." She cheered when her jutsu finally worked and a loud roar was heard. This roar made the area around Naruko explode with a huge electric charge. She then yawned as apparently trying that jutsu so many times had worn her out. Shrugging, she dispelled all of her clones slowly and walked inside. She lifting the napping Emilia up with her psychic powers and floated over to the couch. She setting down curled up with Emilia as she had learned how to stop her floating. Emilia feeling her master curling up with her nuzzled into the warmth and both were soon asleep. 2 days later and Naruko was floating through the village on her way to the Hokage Tower. She had decided to go visit her favorite old man. She wasn't really paying attention to where she was going as her nose was buried in a book she had found in her mom's desk. It was a book about weapons and weapon making. She wanted to have something to set herself apart from other genin, besides her exotic looks and extreme heritage. Emilia was back at the compound resting on the couch. Apparently the hyena pup was very lazy, but Naruko knew that Emilia had the potential to be her little monster. Naruko stopped and turned to find a little boy that reminded her of the old man glaring at a man she knew for sure was a pervert. She wondered what was going on, so she listened to their conversation. She scowled when the man, Ebisu, said, "Listen to what I say, honorable grandson, and you'll be Hokage in no time." The boy growled and said, "My name is Konohamaru Sarutobi, not honorable grandson." Ebisu, ignoring this statement, said, "The first step is to always be kind and polite, no matter the situation." Konohamaru snorted and said, "The old man isn't always kind and polite." Ebisu was about to respond when Naruko said, "He's right." The old man isn't always kind and polite, but the times when he fails to be so is usually when he's confronting an enemy or an slippery opponent. Both people turned to look at her and Ebisu fainted from a nosebleed. Naruto ignored the pervert's faint and floated Konohamaru to her as she smiled at him. She still doing so said, "Hello, my name is Naruto Amelia Namikaze and that pervert there is not fit to be molding your brain." Konohamaru looking at her with a small blush on his face asked, "Are you an angel?" She giggled and said, "No, you little flatterer, but I am half goddess." Konohamaru giving her a goofy grin said, "That was my next guess." She giggled and said, "You're so sweet. I'm bringing you with me to see the old man." He simply nodded with a dumbstruck look on his face. She then continued on her way, Konohamaru now floating behind her. Many of the males spotting this wished they were in his shoes as Naruto was beyond gorgeous. Many of the females actually wished they were in his shoes as even they couldn't deny Naruto's outlandish beauty. Naruto with the floating Konohamaru would arrive at the Hokage Tower a few minutes later and she climbing up the stairs kicked open his door like normal. He giving her a plain look asked, "Why can't you ever enter like a normal person?" She smiled and said, "Because being normal is boring and we both know what happens when I get bored." She giggled when he shivered in pure fear. He shaking his head asked, "Why are you here, Naruto-chan?" She giggled and said, "I'm here to relieve you of your eternal battle with the evil paperwork for an hour or two." Hiruzen hearing this was instantly up and out the door with the two as he said, "Well then let's go." Naruto rolled her eyes as the old man acted like the paperwork was the devil. She then gained wide eyes as she swore she heard something chuckle. Turning she set her eyes on the paperwork and shivered when it gained a menacing aura. She quickly moved on as she didn't want to touch that can of worms. She would get home several hours later after forcing the old man to take her shopping. She giggled as the man's wallet was going to be crying for quite some time. She had mostly bought material for weapons, but she had purchased some clothes as she didn't plan on wearing what was in her house, as it was not only old but had been worn by her mom and dad. She had also bought some things for Amelia who had greeted her at the door before running off to play with the new toys Naruto had given her. Naruto plopping down on her couch smiled as she had gained a little sibling today in the form of one little Konohamaru Sarutobi. The boy had stuck to her like glue after she had rescued him from his perverted tutor. She had also learned that the boy hated the way he was treated by the village as they never used his name, as they always called him honorable grandson. Naruto had changed that and had started calling him twerp or honorable brat. Konohamaru had appreciated that and had called her big sister. She couldn't stop the smile that appeared on her face with this as she had someone that looked up to her. She blinked finding herself in what looked like a sewer system. Standing up she scowled as her feet was in the water. Activating her psychic aura she smiled as she was now floating. She looking around wondered where she was, but decided to follow the glow that reminded her of the red chakra and her fire element. She blinked finding herself in a large room with golden gates standing in the middle. At the very top of these gates a small piece of paper with the kanji for seal could be seen. Naruto blinked and looked inside of the darkness beyond the gates as she had an inkling to where she was. When a very large demonic pair of blood-red eyes opened up her thought was confirmed. She already knowing the reason behind the Kyuubi's attack on the village decided to try and be friendly. Doing a small bow she said, "Hello, my name is Naruto Amelia Namikaze and I hope that we can be friends." The eyes just continued to stare at her until they vanished and a large gust of wind hit the room. Naruto blinked wondering what happened until a feminine voice said, "I already know who you are and it depends on your reaction to this if we can be friends or not." Something then stepped out of the shadows and Naruto's face burned red. Standing in front of her was a woman that actually made her look like a normal girl. This woman had long flowing auburn hair that was all the way to her. Her skin was pale and flawless. Her eyes were blood red with a black slitted pupil. Around both eyes black makeup could be seen. On her lips was a lovely shade of red lipstick. She had a body that was fantastic. She was dressed in a pink kimono that hugged her like a drunk held a toilet. Flowing behind her were 9 blood-red fox tails. This woman smirked, spotting the reaction she caused on Naruto. She said, "Yes, we're going to be fine friends. My name is Selena Yoko and I'm the queen of Fox, Kitsune and overlord of Fox Monster Girls." Naruto blinked several times and asked, "So you're the Kyuubi, but what the hell is a monster girl?" Selena, sighing, made an seat appear as she sat down. She then said, "Monster girls, also known as Momono, are magical hybrids that combine the features of monster from the past with that of a succubus. They have superhuman strength and an instinctive urge towards wanton mating. They also have great difficulty with the word no. The bodies of all monster girls are supernaturally beautiful and they come in all sizes, shapes and dispositions. Monster girls were created by a succubus who later became something known as Demon Lord. Monster girls aren't from this world, or even this plane of existence. The tailed beast are the exception to this, as all 9 of us are monster girls, as we're all female and take up monstrous forms. When you use that jutsu, my perverted friend Hashirama Senju created before he met his wife, you made yourself a monster girl. But since I was inside of you and your unique heritage, you, Naruto Emilia Namikaze, became the demon lord of this universe, and unlike the first demon lord, you are a divine demon lord." Naruto blinked hearing this and asked, "So I'm a demon lord?" Selena, nodding, said, "Yes, and you're also the monster overlord. This means that all monsters, regular or monster girl, have to obey you. Since we're friends, I will inform you that you can turn others into monsters or Pokegirls. Like for instance the Hyuga girl who stalks you, you could transform her into a monster girl or a Pokegirl." Naruto blinked hearing this but snorted and said, "No way. Hinata-chan is nice and all that, but she's creepy now. As a monster girl she'd be worse." Selena giggled and said, "Yes, she would. Now allow me to help you with your weapon ideas, and if you'd allow me I can probably contact a divine friend of mine and get you some unique weapons." Naruto, smiling, said, "Of course I'd allow you, as you're technically my very first friend and I trust you." Selena smiled and, "Thank you. I'll also throw in my ultimate earth jutsu." Naruto smiled and, looking around, decided to change the mindscape for Selena. Shutting her eyes, she shifted it into a gorgeous palace. Opening her eyes, she giggled as Selena had a shocked look on her face. The shock turned into a blush as the seal shifted into a gorgeous diamond ring and was placed on her finger. Naruto, giggling, said, "I'll let you enjoy your new palace and return to my book." She then faded from the mindscape. Selena, with a gorgeous smile on her face, said, "You're definitely getting a Gundam suit now." Naruto would appear in the real world and yawn. Getting up, she walked towards the kitchen to fix herself a small snack. She opening up her kitchen, sweat dropped, spotting Emilia curled up on the bottom shelf covered in various forms of food. Shutting the door, Naruto shook her head as her little monster had eaten all of the food in the fridge and was now once again taking a nap. Shaking her head again, she opened up one of the pantries and floated a bag of chips out. Opening them, she started to eat the salt and vinegar flavored chips. Walking back in the living room, she blinked, spotting a note on her book. Picking it up, she read it and beamed. Apparently Selena's friend had come through and she now had a place to forge weapons. Skipping outside, she followed the directions and found herself near the Namikaze hot springs. In fact, she was in front of the tool shack. Shrugging, she opened the door and her jaw nearly touched the ground as she found a huge room with a smelter, a tanning rack and even an anvil in it. Walking inside, she closed the door behind her and instantly had to remove her top. She then started to explore the room. An hour later, Naruto, covered in soot, had managed to create her first weapon. It was a shitty kunai that would break with ease, but it was her first weapon. Sitting it down, she wiped the soot off of her face and wondered what she should try next. She blinked when Selena said, "You should open that box over in the corner." Naruto, spotting said box, walked over to it and opened it. Her eyes widened, finding a lot of metal pieces along with an instruction manual and a note. Picking up the note, she read it. Apparently the metal and forge was from Selena's friend. The note also told her that if she could make the weapon these pieces of metal created, the ninja world would never be the same. Shrugging, she picked up the instruction manual and after reading it twice she asked, "What the hell is a mobile Gundam suit?" Shaking her head she started to read the manual and by the time she had gotten halfway through it she was damn sure that if she managed to create a Gundam she'd have a weapon of mass destruction on her hands. Getting up she decided to catch some sleep before she finished the manual. Walking outside of the building she blinked as it was midnight. Shaking her head she walked inside of her home and after washing off climbed into her bed and was soon slumbering peacefully. Amelia once again cuddled up to her. The next morning Naruko, after fixing herself and Amelia breakfast, was finishing up the manual and having her clones work on forging other weapons. She finishing the manual set it down and tied her hair into a ponytail. She also put some gloves on and created some more clones. They all then got to work on trying to create a Gundam. Inside of her half-asleep Selena was pretty sure her container could and would create a Gundam. It would take 3 hours of non-stop work but Naruko and her clones were standing in front of an complete mobile Gundam suit. Naruko designed it in her own image, but had reduced the wings to 2. It was still colorless but Naruko had her clones on fixing that. She with a brilliant smile on her face asked, "What do you think, Selena?" The Fox Queen whistled and said, "Impressive, now you just have to give it some color and a name." Naruko giggled and said, "I already have a name for it. She's gonna be named Wing Selena." Selena hearing this blinked several times before smiling and said, "You're so awesome." Naruko giggled and watched as her clones got to painting and detailing the Wing Selena. She, knowing that she had a lot more metal, decided to make another one. She then blinked when Selena said, "Yes, create another one and this time name it Wing Zero." Naruko nodding saluted and said, "You got it." She and her clones got to work and pretty soon the forgery was busy with Naruko's working on projects. At some point Amelia came in and took a nap by the fire. Naruko, finishing the weapons system on Wing Zero, said, "The weapons system is online. Now all I have to do is figure out what weapons I want." One of the clones using its psychic powers floated a sword onto the hip of the Winged Selena and said, "You haven't even decided what weapons Winged Selena is going to have." Another clone forging a sword made with some of Naruko's feathers said, "This is like the 5th try to forge something with feathers from our wings." A clone holding a standard katana that it had just forged said, "We're getting much better as forging." A clone inspecting a set of 100 kunai and shuriken said, "Damn right we are." Naruko giggled as her clones were funny and diverse. Then a clone came in with a bag full of what looked like not inflated balloons. She blinked when Selena informed her that those weren't balloons but condoms. She was then informed what condoms were for and her face turned green. She asked, "What are you going to do with those?" The clone eye smiled and said, "Fill them up with dog piss and throw them at people." She sweat dropped and asked, "Am I this much of a menace?" All of the non-hostile, prank-ready clones nodded and said, "Yes, yes we are." The sweat drop grew. 2 days later and Naruko was in her central command looking at the schematics to the Wing Zero as she and about 200 clones pondered on ways to make it smaller, able to fit her body. They had already done so with the Wing Selena. Hell, they had done so on the first try and had since then been adding things to it. The Wing Zero almost acted like it was sentient and kami. If that was true, then Naruko needed to change careers. Some of her clones were actually coming up with devious plans on how to blackmail, bribe the old Hokage and Iruka into teaching them new things. Hell, about 10 clones were devising strategic and dangerous plans on how to make the Uchiha suffer. Some of those plans involved fangirls, dark rooms and rope. Naruko shivered just thinking about them. Amelia, her adorable hyena pup, was sitting in one of the clones' lap being petted like the cats in those movies where the evil guy is plotting and stroking the cat. Naruko, looking at the schematics, slammed her hand down and said, "There has to be a way." One of her clones nodding said, "There is, but we're just not getting it." Another clone cackling said, "The bastard Uchiha will rue the day he called us a worthless loser." Almost all of the Naruko's sweat dropped hearing this clone. The real Naruko, shaking her head, said, ignoring that obviously crazy clone. We should work on something else to take our mind off of the problem. One of the clones, one of the ones that seemed to be permanently covered in soot, said, let's work forging blades like those of the legendary 7 swordsmen of the mist. Several clones nodded. A clone with a white lab coat on said, I say we work on poisons and potions to help our fellow ninja. Some clones nodded here. A clone dressed in a sports bra and shorts said, Yush, I say we work on our physical training so that our flames of sexiness will not diminish. The clones dressed like her cheered and said, let us stroke the flames of sexiness. All of the other Narukos either sweat dropped or slid away. The original Naruko said, here's what we're going to do. We're all going to work on what we want to work on. Except you clones with plans on getting pay back on the tem. Belay those plans until further notice. Find something else to do. The prank clones all pouted but said, sir, yes sir. Naruko rolled her eyes and watched as all of the Narukos filed out. Standing up and shaking her joints, she said, I'm going to work on my elemental jutsu and maybe fine-tune my psychic attacks. She then skipped out of command central, never noticing that one clone had remained and was making adjustments to a schematic. This clone had thick black framed glass on, her hair up in a ponytail, and was sucking on a lollipop. This was Geek Naruko, the smartest version of Naruko possible. She was also the one who came up with Naruko's inane plans that somehow always worked out. Geek Naruko, pulling the lollipop out of her mouth, giggled and said, with these plans I will increase our productivity and power by 10,000. She then cackled in glee as her plans would make things a lot easier. The next afternoon Naruko was sitting on the couch in the cage tower, was reading the schematics Geek Naruko had been going over yesterday. Apparently Geek Naruko had been working on a new clone jutsu. Well, 2 new clone jutsu actually. The one that had the most merit though was the one dubbed monster clone jutsu. If it worked, she'd be able to create a solid clone that would be a breed of monster girl. She thankfully had Selena to help her with said jutsu and what each monster girl looked like. Naruko was dressed in her fanciest kimono as apparently the old man had decided to announce her heritage to the village today. She still didn't care as the villagers were ignorant shits who didn't deserve to have any ninja working for them. Of course the exceptions were Ayame and Tuki, as those two were awesome regardless. She blinked when the old man walked in along with the 2 elders and a shitload of ANBU. Standing up she asked, what's up with the ANBU, old man? Sarutobi, smiling at her, said, crowd control. Also I might have to assign a ANBU protection squad to you to keep the lunatics back. Naruko rolled her eyes and said, Gigi, if the lunatics approach I can just toss them like yesterday's garbage. She then heard several barks. Giggling she said, plus my little monster would maul them. Sarutobi, confused wondering who she was talking about, blinked when a hyena pup popped out of Naruko's kimono. Naruko, giggling as Emilia was tickling her, said, old man, meet Emilia Namikaze, my lovely little monster. Emilia, wagging her tail and tickling Naruko even more, barked. Sarutobi, chuckling, said, nice to meet you, Emilia. Now then I'll start, and once I call your name that's your cue to come out. Naruko nodded and said, sure thing, old man. He, coughing, then walked out of the balcony and watched as the crowd all quieted down. Spotting Konohamaru in his new outfit, the old man couldn't help but smile. It seems as the boy's meeting with Naruko had changed him and kick-started the youth. Coughing he said, citizens of Konoha, I have called you all here today to reveal something to you that has been hidden for nearly 13 years. Today a great and powerful secret is revealed and it will strengthen us as a whole. He noticed how some of the adults started to look at each other knowingly, many of them thinking he was about to say that Naruko was a demon. He actually couldn't wait to see the looks on their faces. He, coughing, said, 12 years ago on October 10th, in a hidden grotto outside of the village guarded by many elite ANBU, an event was going on. This event was the birth of the daughter of our 4th Hokage, Namikaze Minato, and his wife Namikaze Kushina. He was able to catch the gasp, and one civilian asked, Yondaime-sama had a child? Sarutobi nodding said, yes he did. Now this night is infamous for another reason. It was the night the Kyuubi attacked. Many of the younger generation don't know the true story. Hell, I only learned the true story 2 weeks ago. You see, there is no way to kill a tailed beast, so instead the Yondaime sealed it inside of the only baby at the time. He watched the eyes widen and how pale the civilians became. One civilian trembling asked, do you mean? Sarutobi nodding said, indeed, he sealed the fox inside of his own daughter, with his last wish being that she be seen as the hero she was. For 12 years the girl grew up, not as a female, but as a boy with his mother's maiden name. For 12 years this boy was forced to suffer the blind rage of this village from both civilian and ninja alike. Those who didn't treat the boy like the fox was few and fleeting, but they did what the Yondaime asked. A few nights ago he was tricked by Mizuki into stealing the forbidden scroll. It was this night when she learned the truth of her heritage and who her parents were. He, coughing and ignoring the wide eyes and the many pale faces, said, Konoha, I present to you the daughter of the yellow flash and flaming demoness, Namikaze Emilia Naruko. Naruko, hearing her cue, walked outside and watched as the people started fainting from pure shock. Some just stood there in abstract horror. Naruko could see her former landlord standing there in pure shock. She, doing a small curtsy, said, hello, my name's Naruko Emilia Namikaze. She then, feeling a certain hyena wiggle, floated the hyena out and said, this is my adorable little monster Emilia Namikaze. Emilia barked and wagged her tail. Sarutobi, coughing, said, yes, now thankfully Naruko-chan has decided to remain in the village despite the efforts of most of the people in this village. Now you are all dismissed. The crowd, hearing this, slowly vanished, many in pure shock. Naruko ignored this and walked back inside. She also ignored when ANBU fell in around her, acting like bodyguards. Grabbing the schematics, she said, all right old man, see you later. She then vanished in a gust of wind. Sarutobi, watching as all of his paperwork hit the ground, cried as he had to redo them now. The next day, Geek Naruko could be seen watching Flames of Sexiness Naruko training. Geek Naruko was of course ignoring the insane things the Flames of Sexiness clones was saying in favor of trying to come up with a way to create monster clones. The original Naruko was actually hiding in an alleyway as the mobs of fans prowled the street. Apparently her officially becoming the last Namikaze had boosted her popularity and her the desire factor. She had stepped out to buy some groceries as Emilia kept eating all of the food, when she had nearly been mobbed. Thankfully she could teleport away from dangerous situations like that. Right now she was in alleyway she had hidden in when she was younger. Once sure the mob had moved on, she teleported to the grocery store and quickly did her shopping. After paying, she was about to teleport away when Anko grabbed her in a bear hug and said, I've been looking for you, Foxy Heim. Naruko, rolling her eyes, said, Snake Heim, let me go before the mobs come back. Anko smiled and said, don't worry, I've got this. She then shushined the both of them to the inside of her apartment. Naruko, realizing this, smiled and sat down on the couch. Anko, sitting down in her chair, asked, so when were you going to tell me that you bought my apartment complex? Naruko, I smiled and said, I wasn't. It was a gift and thank you treating me like a human even though you knew about the fox inside of me. Anko snorted and wrapped Naruko in a one-armed hug and said, I didn't do it for thanks. Us pariahs got to stick together, because if we don't have each other we have nothing. Naruko, giggling, hugged Anko back and said, damn right we do. The two then laughed and Anko asked, so how's life? Naruko, giggling, said, awesome. I have a huge home, the shadow clone jutsu is like the ultimate hack, and I have this awesome weapon to use on my future enemies. Anko, curious, asked, what is this weapon? Naruko giggled and asked, do you really want to know? Anko nodded vigorously. Naruko, letting a little of her inner pervert show, giggled perversely and said, I'll show you if you show me your. Anko, hearing this, blinked at first. She then gave Naruko a flat look and asked, you're never going to give up on seeing my boobs, are you? Naruko giggled and shook her head negative. Anko sighing shocked Naruko when she lifted up her skin-colored shirt to reveal her round, firm and perky 42DD cup. Naruko instantly pinched the bridge of her nose to keep the blood from shooting from her nostrils. Sadly, her clones, having discovered the ability, linked all blew back with massive nosebleeds. Including Geek Naruko, who was already coming up with plans to see more of Anko's amazing body. Anko, with a smirk on her face, covered her girls up and said, "Pay up." Naruko, shaking her many perverse thoughts away, nodded and grabbing Anko's hand used teleport. Appearing in her home, she ignored all of her passed out and giggling clones. She then pulled the shocked Anko into her workshop. Anko's eyes nearly popped out her head, spotting the massive suit of armor. Naruko, beaming with pride, said, "Allow me to introduce Mobile Gundam Suit Wing Zero." Anko, staring at the massive suit of war, asked, "How in the hell did you make this?" Naruko giggled, "With the help of a certain friend of mine." Anko, turning to her, asked, "Can you make me one?" Naruko was about to respond when Geek Naruko appeared and slapped her hand over the original Naruko's mouth. Geek Naruko then pushed up her glasses and said, "We can do that, but it will cost you." Anko, quirking her eyebrow, asked, "How much?" Geek Naruko smiled at her and responded with, "A kiss." Anko blinked, narrowed her eyes and asked, "What is the catch?" Geek Naruko, eye smiling, responded with, "If this kiss turns you on in any way, you have to be the test subject for our new jutsu." Anko blinked and snorted. She then said, "Bring it on." Geek Naruko giggled and walked over to Anko, knowing that the snake summoning woman had already lost this bet, as she was a damn succubus, literally. Kissing Anko, all of the Narukos smirked when Anko's nipples got hard and the smell of her arousal hit the air. Geek Naruko, ending the kiss, stepped back with a sultry smirk on her face. Anko, with glossed over eyes, licked her lips. The original Naruko eye smiled. Anko, shaking her head, asked, "Where did you learn to kiss like that?" Naruko, still eye smiling, replied in a sing-song voice, "Wouldn't you like to know?" Anko sighed, "Okay, you got your kiss and turned me on. I'll be your test subject, just make me a suit of armor like that." Naruko, nodding, had one of the clones escort Anko to another room to get her measurements and preferences. 2 days later, Naruko, sitting in the classroom, wasn't paying attention to Haruka's boring speech about the responsibilities the class now had, and was instead reading the notes on the monster clone jutsu. Apparently, Geek Naruko had tried it out on Anko and it had created what Selena called an Amazonas. The clone had looked at Anko like a piece of meat and then pinned the purple-haired special Jonin to the wall, while basically molesting Anko. After the clone had been destroyed, Geek Naruko had started to analyze the data from the clone and had written it down. She had then tried the jutsu out twice more with Anko's help. The second time, the clone had been what Selena called a Ryu. This clone had seemed more subdued until Anko made the comment that this clone was damn gorgeous. The clone had blushed and then repeated what the first clone had done, except this clone had licked one of Anko's hard nipples. The clone was quickly destroyed but left behind a blushing darkly Anko. The third clone had been an Anubis and had glared at Anko for all of 5 seconds before starting to flirt with the snake summoner. This clone had lasted the longest as it hadn't straight up molested Anko, and ended up actually being molested by Anko. It was then dispelled and Anko had been a stuttering and blushing mess. Geek Naruko had theorized that the type of monster girl the clone took after was random at best. This meant that was no telling what kind of monster girl would appear from the jutsu. The good thing about this was that all info was relayed back to her after the clone was destroyed or dispelled. Unlike the shadow clone jutsu, which couldn't return physical knowledge, this clone did. As the clone that had licked Anko's nipple had sent back what Anko's nipple felt like in her mouth. The first clone, that had rubbed its knee against Anko's sacred spot, had learned that Anko did not wear panties all the time. The last clone had learned what Anko Mitarashi being attracted to you was like. Naruko considered the last clone a lucky bitch. Geek Naruko was actually at the Namikaze compound working on the jutsu right now, using only 3 clones and Ayame-chan who had volunteered. Naruko had blood dripping from her nostrils as Ayame was in the middle of a tongue war with a clone that had took the form of a Jabberwock, a ogre, and a wyvern. It was the hottest and most erotic thing Naruko had bore witness to so far. Naruko ignored how Selena was beaming at how much of a pervert her container was becoming already. Shaking her head, she blinked when Iruka said, Team 11 is Ino Yamanaka, Naruko A. Namikaze and 1010. Apparently she was on an all-kunoichi team. Sakura Haruno, her least favorite person in the world, asked, Iruka-sensei, who is this 1010 person? Iruka, coughing, explained who 1010 was and even explained why she was being allowed to change teams. He then shooed all of them to lunch. Naruko, walking outside, blinked when Konohamaru's voice could be heard coming towards her. Turning, she smiled, spotting said boy who with stars in his eyes told her, I did it, Nei-chan. She asked, did what? He with a brilliant smile quickly went through hand signs before saying, wind style, air cutter jutsu. She cooed when he created several sharp blades made of wind around him. Floating him up, she nuzzled him, ignoring how he basked in her affection. He nuzzling her back, you promised to teach me another jutsu. She, floating with him now and ignoring all of the eyes on the two of them, said, I will teach you another jutsu. He smiled as he asked, will you sing me a song, Nei-chan? She, smiling softly, said, sure, twerp. She then, lifting up her hands, smiled when the grass, leaves and some of the bark from the trees lifted up and created a small guitar. She, floating up higher, shut her eyes and used her amplify jutsu. She, strumming the strings, opened her mouth and sang, Broken Wings by Flyleaf. I don't own but I do love. Thank you for being such a friend to me. Oh, I pray a friend for life. And have I ever told you how much you mean to me? Oh, you're everything to me. And I am so lost for words. And I am so overwhelmed. Please don't go just yet. Can we stay a moment, please? We can dance together. We can dance forever. Under your stars tonight. And I am so overwhelmed. By 1,000 broken wings. 1,000 broken wings. So close your eyes, but don't dream too deep. And please pass me some memories. And when I fall, you're underneath. 1,000 broken hearts. Carried by 1,000 broken wings. 1,000 broken wings. 1,000 broken wings. 1,000 voices singing reasons of understanding why it happens. 1,000 voices singing reasons of understanding why it happens. 1,000 voices singing reasons of understanding why it happens. Naruko then ended the song and Konohamaru was swooning as his new favorite person had just gave him an performance with her angelic singing voice. Naruko, giggling, set Konohamaru down and placed a gentle kiss on his forehead, transferring the info on the new jutsu she had for him. Konohamaru, getting this info, blinked and ran off to get to work on it. Naruko, spotting him go, giggled and decided to float until it was time to go back in for the teams. She had failed to notice how her little show had made most of the academy swoon. Even Sasuke's fangirls were swooning with hearts for eyes, and this included his two most loyal fans. Ino, having been the closest to Naruko as she sang, was actually grateful that she was on Naruko's team now. If she could get Naruko to sing like that more often, she'd have it made. Sakura had a pout on her face as she wanted to have both Sasuke and Naruko on her team, that way she could seduce and be with both of them. Of course, Sasuke would be her main love interest, while Naruko would be her little side project. Sakura didn't realize that Naruko could read minds and had just read hers. Naruko's face had a deep scowl on it, as there was no way in hell she'd ever fall for Sakura, as the pink-haired troll was way too manipulative and was so flat a cardboard box had more appeal than her. Sighing, Naruko decided to ignore the others and started to play her little guitar to bide the time. An hour later, she was listening to Selena as her first friend explained what her duties as the Demon Lord was. Apparently it was to corrupt as many people as possible and for her specifically gain as many mates as possible. Naruko wondered how difficult that was going to be. She blinked when a woman that made her gain hearts for eyes walked in. This woman is Kurenai Yuhi and she was the sensei of Team 8. She shaking her head called for Team 8 to follow her. Naruto watching her leave was very jealous of Kiba right now as the dog boy got to follow that very fine woman. She couldn't stop herself from doing a wolf whistle. Kiba actually agreeing with Naruto smirked and howled as his sensei was damn hot. Kurenai ignored Kiba's howl, but a small blush found itself on her face as the Namikaze heiress had apparently liked her. Asuma then walked into the room and snickered at Kurenai's blush. Naruto spotting him beamed and glomped the man. He nearly fell over as Naruto said, "Uncle Smokey." Asuma sweat dropped and asked, "I'm never getting rid of that nickname, am I?" Naruto shook her head negative but did separate herself from him. Asuma patting her head signaled for Team 10 to follow him. This left Team 7 and 11 in the room. Naruto curious on who her sensei was blinked feeling an familiar chakra presence barreling towards the room. She then started to giggle like a pervert as none other than Anko burst into the room and said, "The sexy and single Anko Mitarashi is here for her awesome team." Naruto giggled even more as Anko's bosom jiggled when she did this and the image of those lovely orbs was imprinted in Naruto's mind. Iruka with a sweat drop wondered if placing the already dramatic Naruto under Anko was such a good thing. Ino sweat dropped wondering what poor fools was going to be her team. Anko coughing said, "All right Team 11 come with me." Naruto nodding got up and followed Anko along with Ino. This left only Team 7 in the room, none of the three genin realizing that they would be in for a long wait as their sensei was notorious for being late. In training ground 11 Anko was standing in front of her three genin. She knew Naruto personally, but the other two were mysteries. Yeah, she had read their files but files only told you so much. Coughing she said, "All right, here's what's going down. I've been instructed by the Hokage to pass the team and I'm sure you know why, Naruto. But in order to know what to work on I need to learn about two of you. So we're all gonna introduce ourselves. I'll go first." She taking a break coughed and continued with, "My name is Anko Mitarashi. I'm 24 years old and special Jonin of Konoha. My likes are Dango, my friends, Foxy-chan over there in comfy chairs. My dislikes are rapist, perverts, my former sensei and useless fangirls. My hobbies are hanging out with my friends and teasing Foxy-chan. My dream for the future is to kill my former sensei and find someone to have a family with." She then pointed at Ino who followed up with, "My name is Ino Yamanaka and I'm 12 years old. I'm a genin and recently graduated from the academy. My likes are my family, flowers, music and Naruto's singing. My dislikes are Sakura, perverts and lazy bums. My hobbies are gardening and reading romantic novels. My dream for the future is to become clan head and make my dad proud." Anko was pleasantly surprised as Ino was less of a fangirl than she thought. 1010 figuring she was next said, "My name is 1010, and I'm 13 years old. I've been a genin for a little over a year now. My likes are weapons, fireworks and good opponents. My dislikes are fangirls, my former team and anyone who doubts the power of a kunoichi. My hobbies are collecting weapons and dancing. My dream for the future is to become a legendary kunoichi like Tsunade of the Sannin." All eyes moved to Naruto who was nuzzling Emilia who had walked into the training ground. She without missing a beat said, "My name is Naruto Emilia Namikaze and I'm 12 years old, I'll be 13 in a few months. Like Ino I recently graduated from the academy. My likes are Snake Heim, ramen, Ayame-chan, my precious little monster, the twerp, the old man and music. My dislikes are Sakura Haruno, Uchiha in general, vegetables of any kind, fangirls and the wait time for ramen. My hobbies are creating weapons, making new jutsu and singing. My dreams for the future is to become the greatest Hokage of all time, and have a gigantic family." Anko I smiling said, "Alright, now that I know your dreams I can get started on Anko's boot camp from hell." Ino and 1010 both sweat dropped, while Naruto continued to nuzzle Emilia who was nuzzling her back. 2 days later and Team 11 was going through Anko's training. Naruko was forced to do the most because of her quick healing and incredible endurance. Right now Naruko was doing crunches as Ino and Tenten got their 30-minute break. Naruko really wasn't paying attention to the exercise as Geek Naruko had finally worked out the kinks to the monster clone jutsu, and right now with permission from the old man, several monster clones were out taking care of missions and infiltrating other hidden villages. Because of the linked ability, Naruko could see everything the clones could and felt everything they did. A large group of her clones had infiltrated the ranks of Danzo's root ANBU and were supposedly getting their emotions trained out of them. Even more of the monster clones were doing the D-rank missions for Team 11 as Naruko refused to do any menial chores the civilians were too lazy to do. The fact that her clones had the abilities of whatever monster girl they took the form of, plus her own, made the jobs extremely easy. Several of her clones actually using their beauty had seduced even more money out of the clients. Some of the monster clones had actually sunk their hooks into members of the civilian council. One of her clones, that had taken the form of a dark Valkyrie, had actually managed to get married to Sakura's mom. Naruko found it hilarious that said woman was pregnant with her child right now and that she was technically Sakura's stepmom. Another of her clones, one who had taken the form of a chimera, had managed to not only befriend the wife of the Fire Lord, but had become the secret not-so-secret lover of said woman. Apparently the Fire Lord was gay, and has used his wife as a beard for the longest time, making the woman a craved fiend. Her clone had taken care of this problem and had learned that the woman had more power than the Fire Lord, as she had been taking his power away for years now. Naruko blinked when Anko shouted, "Naruko." Turning, she titled her head and asked, "What is it, Anko-sensei?" Anko, looking slightly irritated, asked, "Where the hell did you go? We've been trying to get your attention for the past 30 minutes. Naruko, curious, titled her head and asked, "We?" She blinked when her little monster jumped onto her stomach and licked her face. Naruko instantly started to nuzzle Amelia, who had a worried look in her eyes. Amelia, feeling this nuzzle, barked several times, causing Naruko to start and spread her psychic aura out. She blinked as her ANBU guard was back, and hiding throughout the training ground, with the mysterious cat-masked ANBU, that Naruko was damn sure was hot, being hidden behind the standing Ino. Blinking, she looked at Anko and asked, "What's going on, Anko-sensei?" Anko, giving her a plain look, said, "Hokage-sama has requested us in his office, saying it's a matter of great importance." Naruko, highly doubting that, said, "All right then, let's go see the old man, but I swear to Kami, if the old man is trying to use me to get out of his paperwork again, I'm unleashing the prank clones on his senile." Everyone's sweat dropped hearing her say this, and Ino asked, "What is wrong with you?" Naruko shrugged and responded with, "Kami knows." Everyone felt the sweat drop grow hearing this response. Anko, shaking her sweat drop away, was beaming with pride as Naruko was going to drive people crazy. A short while later, and Team 11 was in the Hokage office. Naruko, sitting in a chair with Amelia in her lap, was curious on why the old man had them wait. She then, hearing the door open, blinked, spotting Sume along with Hana walk in. Sarutobi, once he spotted the two Inuzuka women, stopped his eternal battle with the paperwork and reached into his desk. He pulled out 4 scrolls, one with the Inuzuka clan symbol on it along with the Uzumaki whirlpool. Naruko, spotting this symbol, was now very curious and slightly wary. Sarutobi coughed, "Now that everyone is gathered, I can reveal what is going on." He, opening the first scroll, coughed and said, "This scroll is a marriage contract between Naruko Namikaze and Karui of Kumo. This marriage contract was agreed upon by Namikaze Minato and I, the 4th Raikage. The marriage is to strengthen the very fragile and somewhat strained relationship between Kumo and Konoha. The marriage has been agreed upon by both daimyo, and as I speak, Karui is being escorted to Konoha so that the marriage can take place." Naruko's eyes were wide hearing this, and Amelia looked at Sarutobi like he was smoking that good shit. He, sitting this scroll down, said, "This scroll is the marriage contract between Naruko Namikaze and Kuretsuchi of Iwa. This contract was agreed upon by Minato Namikaze and Onoki in order to ally Konoha with Iwa and end the senseless bloodshed on both sides. As I speak, she is being escorted to Konoha so that the marriage can take place. He went to go for the third scroll when he was frozen in his spot by the massive killing intent suddenly blanketing the village. He slowly turning to look at Naruto shit himself and he knew for sure he wasn't alone. Naruto was glaring lightning bolts at him as her hair floated behind her into nine tails. Her purple eyes were no longer purple but were blood red and glowing. Naruto was absolutely livid and Amelia's grunts and howls indicated that she wasn't too pleased about this. Sarutobi, breaking out in a cold sweat, was terrified that he was about to meet the Reaper. The ANBU acting as Naruto's guards were trembling as this killing intent was unreal. Even Anko was shocked at the amount of killing intent coming from Naruto. Ino was nearly at the point of passing out from the sheer power behind the killing intent. Ten was actually trembling as she had never felt this amount of killing intent. Naruto, pissed beyond reason, was about to cast hypnosis on the old man and then hit him with the new move she had unlocked called Nightmare. She blinked, finding herself in her mindscape. Selena in her new kimono that Naruto had brought into existence for her. Selena, petting the fox kits Naruto had given her, said, "Naruto Heim, calm down. These little contracts could be a boon to you and your plans." Naruto, curious, sat down and smiled when Amelia hopped into her lap and curled up. Her psychic connection with said hyena pup allowed Amelia to come to the mindscape. Looking at Selena, she asked, "What do you mean?" Selena giggled. "With wives you can corrupt them and transform them into either a monster girl or a Pokegirl. Geek Naruto can also get them to help develop your jutsu and any Pokegirl attacks you learn." Naruto, hearing this, snorted and said, "I don't wanna get married because of some stupid asinine contracts. I wanna get married because of love and an overwhelming lust." Selena, rolling her eyes, responded with, "Naruto, you're basically a few stones away from literally being a goddess. Men, women, children and animals will sooner or later start to fall all over themselves for you. Just give it time, and who knows, maybe these two along with Hana-san will fall head over heels for you." Naruto pouted. "Okay, but you have to show me how to make a demonically enhanced sword." Selena giggled. "I was already doing that. I'll throw in how to make a gunsword." Naruto titled her head, wondering what a gunsword was, but vanished before she could ask. Appearing back in the real world, she let up on her killing intent but still fixed the old man with a fierce glare. She, holding out her hand, said, "Show me their pictures, old man, or else." He gulped loudly and handed her the pictures. She, opening them and letting Amelia see, whistled, "Karui-san sure looks like a kunoichi, a strong one at that. Kuretsuchi-san looks more like a bodyguard." She, handing him back the pictures, turned and looked Hana over. Nodding, she grabbed the last scroll and read it. She nodded again and signed this one. Handing it to Sume, she turned to Sarutobi and gave him one last killing intent charged glare. She then used teleport to go home and get it ready for the new people soon going to be living there. Once sure she was gone, Sarutobi relaxed into his chair and said, "Good grief." Sume chuckled. "Yeah, she's without a doubt Kushina's pup, as that kunoichi could put the fear of God into a biju." Hana sighed and asked, "So do I need to go pack my stuff and move in with her, or do I need to give her the typical Inuzuka mate test?" Sume snorted. "The first one is she'd destroy you in battle, as her stamina is literally endless. Plus I gave her mom the test and she defeated me with ease." Anko shook her head and asked, "So is Team 11 dismissed?" Sarutobi nodded and said, "You can come back tomorrow for a mission." Anko nodded and vanished in a swirl of leaves. Ino and Ten looked at each other and decided to go get some lunch. The next day, and Team 11 could be seen walking towards the mission tower with Naruto nuzzling the calm and docile Tora. This was the only D-rank mission Anko would get Team 11, as Naruto's clones refused to go near the cat for some reason. Naruto was pretty sure it had something to do with animals sticking together, but refused to call her clones out on it. So Team 11 was forced to actually do this mission. Team 11 reaching the tower and walked in. Naruko reluctantly handing Tora to her master, instantly snatched the cat back when the Fire Lord's wife started to smother the poor cat. Naruko creating a clone handed Tora to it before letting her hair raise up and her eyes glow. She lowering the temperature in the room fixed the trembling woman with a glare that did her mother proud. She now full of righteous fury said, "You dare abuse this poor kitty. If you weren't the Fire Lord's wife I'd put you to sleep, eat your dreams and then place you in the darkest nightmare possible." She turning to the purring Tora said, "Instead I'll just be taking Tora-chan off of your hands as I refuse to sit idly by and let any poor animals suffer." The woman having been looking for the right person to take Tora off of her hands as she and her new love didn't like the cat smiled and asked, "You really mean it?" Naruko confused nodded and asked, "Yeah, why?" The lady smiled and opened up her purse and handed Naruko a huge wad of ryo, that had many people in the room gain wide eyes. Naruko being one of said people accepted the cash and asked, "What's this for?" The lady giggled and said, "I'm paying you to take care of my precious Tora-chan. She's yours now Naruko Namikaze. Please treat her right." The lady then bowed and left leaving a shell-shocked room. Sarutobi with his pipe in his lap asked Iruka, "Did Naruko just slay the chase Tora mission?" Iruka numbly nodded. Anko was even shocked as her student had just done something everyone had been trying to do for years, no decades now. Sarutobi shaking his head reached into his desk and pulled out Naruko's ninja folder. He opening it up marked down a completed S-rank mission. He shutting the file stared her in the eyes and asked, "Naruko-chan, is there any particular jutsu, book or skill you would like for slaying this mission?" Naruko still very much confused blinked when Selena said, "You should ask him for some earth jutsu to help with your ground affinity, and maybe ask about summoning contracts." Naruko nodded and repeated what Selena had just said. She blinked when a huge scroll was handed to her and the old man said, "Konoha has 5 summoning contracts. I have the ape monkey summoning contract and my grandson or your little twerp will inherit it when I pass on. Tsunade Senju has the slug contract and is a loyal Konoha kunoichi. Jiraiya has the toad summoning contract, as I'm sure you know as he is your godfather. Kakashi Hatake is the owner of the dog summoning contract and uses them to help him track people. Finally, your own sensei has the snake summoning contract. I'm not sure how many summoning contracts there are, but Enma once informed me that the possibilities were infinite as unlike the human world, the summoning world is connected to all dimensions." Naruko storing what the old man away for geek Naruko nodded and wondered why Selena wanted to know this information. Shaking her head she turned to her shadow clone that was nuzzling the purring Tora and smiled. She then said, "All right, you go get Tora-chan all the things she'll need to live with us. Also buy our little monster some gifts as she's been a good little monster. Buy groceries, Konohamaru a few scrolls, Hana-chan a gift and weapon material." The clone nodding vanished using teleport. Naruko once it was gone rounded on Sarutobi and with a salute said, "Team 11 reporting for C-rank mission." The old man blinked and looked at Anko who nodded. He nodding himself picked up a scroll from the C-rank pile. Opening it he read it and then tossed it to Anko. She catching it read its details and said, "All right Team 11, our first C-rank mission is to investigate a report of a large bandit camp 10 miles from Konoha. Pack your bags for a week. Meet at Gate 6 in 1 hour." All 3 genin kunoichi saluted and all left to do what she had said. 2 days later and Team 11 were secretly watching the bandit camp. Naruko draped in tree branch-like dress was using her very sharp eyes and the eagle she had taken over to check out the camp. So far she had counted over 400 armed men. Most of them were low-level thugs and mercenaries. Only 2 seemed to be ninja. Anko had confirmed this and had congratulated her on her skills. Ino and Tenten had checked the nearby towns to see if there had been any raids. Thankfully there hadn't been, but it could happen any day now. Naruko checking out the missing ninja from Iwa knew in her gut that this man was one of the people who held a grudge on her father for the things he did during the war. She also knew the man would most likely come after with pure burning hatred and wouldn't rest until she was killed. Turning to Ino and Tenten, she asked, "So has Anko-sensei relayed the plan yet?" Ino, shaking her head, said, "Not yet." Tenten, not liking this waiting, growled, "We should be taking these fools out, instead of waiting." Naruto, turning back to the camp, replied with, "Not yet. I get the feeling Anko-sensei is waiting for something and most likely knows more than we do." Tenten was about to respond when suddenly several of the thugs fell to the ground dead with arrows sticking out of their heads. All three kunoichi felt their eyes widen as they had no clue where the arrows had come from. The missing ninja, spotting his men dead, snorted and asked, "So you've finally arrived?" Naruto was confused until several hooded, yet females figures appeared. She, curious on who these people were, shut her eyes and spread her psychic aura. Her eyes shot wide open, feeling the figure at the front energy reserves. That figure had more energy than Naruto, and that was saying something. The Iowa man, laughing loudly, said, "Artemis, the Greek goddess of the hunt, and her little hunters coming to my camp after I captured and tortured one of their own." The hoods dropped and Naruto blushed as every single female was gorgeous beyond belief. Artemis, a 16-year-old girl with long auburn hair and silver eyes, glared at the man and said, "You and your group will die by our hands today, scum." He snorted and snapped his fingers. Naruto's eyes widened when out of the woods and surrounding the camp a lot more men appeared. She, looking down, could see some men actually directly under them. Ino and Tenten were also shocked. Anko, now beside them, hissed, "This is what I was waiting for. I knew that there was more men and didn't want you guys to rush to your deaths." Naruto, shaking her head, remembered what the man had said and asked Selena, "Is she really?" Selena nodded. "Yes, she's really Artemis, Greek goddess of the moon and the hunt, meaning that she's somewhat your family." Naruto, hearing this, turned to Anko and whispered, "Anko-sensei, we have to help them. Artemis is technically a cousin of mine and I can't just let her die." Anko blinked and asked, "What do you mean technically a cousin of yours?" Naruto sighed and pressed her fingers to Anko's forehead. She then transferred what she had read in the letters to her sensei. Anko's eyes nearly popped out of her head learning this information. She then shook her head and asked, "What are you going to do? We're outnumbered by a hell of a lot." Naruto smirked. "You three stay in the trees, I'm about to demonstrate the power my mothers gave to me." She then shot into the sky, not giving her team the time to reply. In the air, Naruto shut her eyes and applied her psychic aura to herself, allowing her to float in midair. She called upon her psychic, lightning and dark elements. Opening her eyes, she opened her mouth and whispered, "Dark release, hyperspace fury jutsu. Lola Senju. If you need to imagine this, look up the Pokemon Hoopa." All around the bandit camp, huge rips in the fabric of reality appeared, all glowing with purple auras. Naruto, creating over 10,000 monster clones, sent them into the original hole and had them fully transform into monsters. She then, flooding the area around the bandit camp with her psychic power, whispered, "Psychic release, trick room jutsu." The entire area glowed for several minutes as the bandits seemed to slow down. She, now ready to finish this very powerful jutsu off, dropped down into the middle of the bandit camp, ignoring all of the eyes on her. She, looking the Iowa ninja dead in the eyes, said, "This is your one and only chance. Give up now and pay for whatever you've done to my cousin, or I'll unleash the final part of my jutsu." The man snarled, "You bitch. You look just like that damn Yondaime." Naruto rolled her eyes and asked, "Is that your answer?" He gave her the finger. She sighed and turned to Artemis. Smiling at the confused goddess, she said, "Hi cousin Artemis, my name is Naruko Amelia Namikaze, and apparently my dad, Minato Namikaze, was a Greek goddess who, using her powers, was reborn here as my dad. I believe in the letter she left for me her name was Persephone. You and my other cousins stay still while I handle this." She then glowed with an yellow electrifying aura as she screamed, lightning style, "Discharge jutsu." She then unleashed an unholy aura of lightning bolts that struck down fools in the blink of an eye. Naruto, not done yet, screamed, "Combination jutsu." psionic hyperspace monster fury jutsu. Artemis, her hunters, Anko, Tenten and Ino all bore witness to the most beautiful, most deadly and most legendary jutsu they'd seen so far. The men in the bandit camp and in the forest were literally dragged into the holes Naruto had created before, and their screams were heard before weapons were spat out of the holes along with either an entire skeleton or a bloodless body. As for the leader, he was grabbed by two large dark blue tentacles. He screaming tried to stand his ground and not be dragged into the hole. Sadly for him, Naruto's kraken would not be denied her meal. 3 more tentacles wrapped around the man and lurched him from the reality he was currently in. Before he could fully go into the hole, Naruto with a slash of her hand removed his head from his body. The holes then shut and Naruto fell flat on her. Anko, Ino and Tenten appearing had their jaws scraping the ground. Naruto giggled. I'd call that a success. Anko's sweat dropped and asked, Naruto-chan, you do realize you just took down over 9,000 armed men by yourself, right? Naruto giggled. I'm sure it wasn't that many. Tenten shook her head. No, Anko-sensei counted right. There was 9,503 armed men including the missing Iwa ninja. I was preparing my weapons just in case I needed to help you. Ino, looking at Naruto like she was some kind of god, asked, how strong are you, Naruto Harem? Artemis with wide eyes asked, whose child did you say you were again? Naruto I smiled, Persephone. Artemis and her hunters all vanished in a howl of wolves to go talk to said goddess and alert the others. Naruto, scratching her chin, said, me thinks that my life is about to get a lot more complicated. Anko, sweat dropping, shook her head and said, alright, let's head back to Konoha. All 3 genin kunoichi nodded and followed their sensei back to the village hidden in the leaves, none of them knowing that Naruto's actions would cause her to meet one of her parents and gaining the attention of a bored and interested goddess of love. 2 weeks later, and Naruto was moonwalking in her forge as her many clones worked on the new weapons they had come up with. Naruto was dressed in a pair of black pants and a black bra with hearts on it. Her wives had moved in and settled in. Hana had moved in first as their marriage had been first. Naruto had created a pair of gauntlets for said woman as a wedding gift. Hana had swooned twice, one because she got to check up on Emilia, revealing that Naruto took great care of her little monster. The second time had been because of the gauntlets. Karui had moved in next and the girl had a very short fuse. Naruto had found that giving the angry redhead a target was a very good idea. Karui had also received a personal weapon from Naruto. It was a hammer made out of Naruto's feathers, some chakra-conducting metal and some demonically enhanced metal. Naruto had come up with the idea for it after reading about an Kumo legend, myth that featured a god of lightning named Thor. Naruto had recreated the hammer and gave it to Karui, who had gasped and hugged her tightly. Naruto had during said hug realized that Karui may have been a serious kunoichi, but the girl was just as flat as Sakura, and that was saying something. Kuretsuchi had been last to move in and Naruto had given her a suit of armor that acted like a living golem. Naruto was in the forge right now as she had been working on a Gundam suit for the twerp and had just finished building it. Geek Naruto had designed it and it was going to be called Mobile Gundam Suit Jackal. It was named this because of the signature weapon it had. The signature weapon was gauntlet that hid a cannon inside of it. This cannon would be able to fire off ammunition nearly at the speed of light. This ammo would be able to rip through anything and would leave crippled enemies. Plus, if Konohamaru put enough chakra into it, would create an pseudo-Jinchuriki aura that would take the form of Jackal. She blinked when the door to her forge was kicked open and in walked Anko along with her teammates plus the newest member of their team, one Yakumo Kurama. The girl and her clan had been cursed by a demon and Kurenai sensei along with the old man had been about to seal Yakumo's chakra away when she got involved. She had ejected the demon from Yakumo and then chewed the old man out. Shaking her head she asked, "What's up, sensei?" Anko with a deadpan look on her face said, "We have an A-rank mission." Naruto's eyes turned into stars as she asked, "Really?" All of Team 11 nodded. Naruto cheered and started to do a silly dance. Anko, knowing that the next part would drop Naruko's happy mood, coughed and said, "The mission is in the small island country of Wave. We're going there as assistants for Team 7. Naruko, hearing this, instantly scowled, as that was the team with the wretched Uchiha. Sending a glare at Anko, she said, "I refuse." Anko's sweat dropped as she asked, "You do know that it doesn't work like that?" Naruko, giving Anko a deadpan look, said, "Sensei, I refuse to help the wretched Uchiha and you can't make me." Anko, feeling the sweat drop groan, asked, "What would it take for you to help the Uchiha?" Naruko, snorting, said, "Kat-san to show me her face and you to admit to having romantic feeling for me." Anko, rolling her eyes, reached into her back pocket and pulled out a picture. Handing it to Naruko, she said, "Hokage-sama figured you'd be ready to refuse the mission, thus he had Kat take this picture for you." After Naruko took the picture, Anko grabbed her and pulled her into a deep kiss that could sear the very soul. Ending the kiss, Anko said, "There's my confession. Now get your gear and come on." Naruko, swooning in place, vanished in her class's teleport to gather her gear. Anko and the other three all looked at the many Naruko clones working on projects in the forge. Ino, spotting what looked like a simple glove being worked on by a geek Naruko, walked over and asked, "What's that?" Geek Naruko, pushing up her black glasses, licked her cheery lipstick-covered lips and responded with, "Well, this glove, if functioning correctly, forces the person hit by it to exit their current body, becoming a wayward soul. The drawback to this power is that the user becomes extremely horny." Ino blinked several times and stared at geek Naruko with confusion. Ten, holding a sword that flames of sexy Naruko had been working on, asked, "What does this do?" Another geek Naruko, carrying a box of spare metal, said, "That sword was created with some of my feathers and the baby teeth of Amelia. It draws out the victim's innermost desire and then twists them until their only desire is to please the user." Ten instantly dropped the sword and moved away. Yukumo, with a ball in her hand, asked, "What about this?" A geek Naruko that was applying some kind of cream to Tora said, "That ball is the gyroscope to a carrier jet. I believe it's the jet with the contents of the lab one of the monster clones discovered." Yukumo, looking at the ball, asked, "Is it safe and what are you doing to Tora-chan?" Another geek Naruko, this one looking like the original geek Naruko, sighed and said, "Relatively speaking, no, as if you drop it the jet would spill its contents all over Kiri. What my clone is doing to Tora is coating her in a thick shell of armor that will protect her from harm and insulate her when she enters the forge. Amelia already has this coating as she sleeps curled up to the original Naruko. The coating also allows Tora to transform into one of 3 monster forms." This drew Anko's attention as she asked, "What is a monster form?" Geek Naruko, pulling out 3 cards, set them down and said, "Monster form is where an ordinary object, be it person or animal, is flooded with the energy of a succubus. Tora-chan will be drawing her energy directly from the original me, thus making her monster forms greater." All 4 females were now looking at the cards. Geek Naruko, staring up Anko's shirt, continued with, "Tora can transform into the Greek monster, the Nemean lion, and be able to go toe-to-toe with most of the village without breaking a sweat." Anko, Ino and Ten all blanched, as Tora was already hazardous to people in the village. With this power-up she would be a true menace. Geek Naruko, ignoring their reactions, turned to the second card and said, "She can also transform into a 2-tailed monster Nekomata. This form allows her to take on the Nibi with ease. Of course, this form has alternate skills and can be the size of a human." All of the females blanched hearing this, while Tora chuckled darkly. Geek Naruko, ignoring that her latest pet was chuckling with menace, said, "The last of Tora's forms is a monster girl, much like my clones. She takes on the form of a were-cat. She gains her natural affinities, which are fire and oddly darkness. They are supplemented by 2 of my affinities. The only downside to this form is that Tora-chan is more likely to capture and rape someone." Eyes widened and Ino asked, "Dear Kami, why would you do this?" Geek Naruko, eye smiling at Ino, said, "Because for the longest time the original me had to rely on Anko-sensei, the old man and the Ichiraku family to protect ourselves and everything we own. Even though our heritage has been revealed, there are still those out there who hate us for things out of our control. Thus, our precious little monsters will need to be able to defend against attacks. Everyone, including Tora, nodded to this logic. The real Naruko then appeared with her gear and said, "Alright, let's get this show on the road, and sensei, the first time the Uchiha tries to order or demand anything from me, I'm crushing his mind." Anko, sighing, nodded and said, "Agreed. Let's go." 5 hours later, and Team 11 all had sweat drops on the back of their heads. They had already caught up with Team 7 and all witnessed Kakashi's so-called training. Anko, pinching the bridge of her nose, said, "Kakashi, you are officially a lazy bastard." Kakashi, turning to Team 11, I smiled and said, Our backup is here, team." Team 7 turned and all blinked, spotting the members of Team 11 up in a tree. Naruko, hopping down and creating a psychic field around her, smirked as the other members of her team floated down. Anko, shaking her head, asked, "What have you taught your team, Kakashi?" He, smiling, said, "Teamwork, and I'm in the process of teaching them the tree walking exercise." The sweat drops grew and Naruko face palmed several times. Ino, shaking her head, looked at Sakura and asked, "How are you still alive, forehead, with such a lazy sensei?" Sakura, sending a glare at Ino, said, "I have Sasuke-kun on my team." Ten snorted and responded with, "Oh great, a fangirl." Sakura growled, hearing this insult from Ten. Naruko, being able to read minds, growled and said, "You watch your damn mouth, Haruno." Sai, the so far silent member of Team 7, could easily tell that the two teams would get along like cats and dogs. Anko, also realizing this, stepped forward and said, "Team Anko, behave." All 4 genin kunoichi saluted and Naruko asked, "What do you want us to do, Anko-sensei?" Anko, turning to her team, responded with, "Go scout the area and see what you can find out about both Gato and the ninja he hired." All 4 genin kunoichi nodded and vanished. Anko then slowly turned on Team 7 with a smile that sent chills down Kakashi's spine. Anko said, "Kakashi Baka, go guard Tazuna at the bridge. I'll be taking over the training of your genin until you're healed." Kakashi, knowing better than to argue, hobbled the hell out of there, feeling only slightly bad for his poor genin. He had just passed Tazuna's home when 2 out of 3 of his genin cried out in agony. He, stopping for a few seconds, sent a little prayer to Kami to watch over his poor genin. 4 hours later, and Naruko had a huge smile on her face, spotting the damage Anko had done to the Uchiha and Haruno during her training. The Uchiha looked like he had been mauled by her precious little monster Tora. The Haruno looked even worse, and that was saying something. Sai looked a little worn out, but Naruko had read his mind and knew that the boy was a member of the old cripple's root. Trying and failing to stop her giggles, she turned to Ino and asked, "So what did you find out, Ino-chan?" Ino, chewing on her sandwich, replied with, "This village is gonna fall to ruin if Gato isn't taken out and the bridge isn't built." Naruko nodded, as she had also found this out. Turning to Yakumo, she asked, "What about you, Yakumo-chan?" Yakumo, pushing her cup of tea forward, said, "The 4 ninja hired by Gato are Zabuza Momochi, a rank missing ninja from Kurigakure, Haku Momochi, unknown if she's a kunoichi from Kiri or not, and the 2 demon brothers." Naruko nodded and turned to Ten and asked, "You?" Ten, gripping her fist tightly, said, "Gato doesn't deserve any mercy, as his actions has caused little girls to sell their bodies for food and money." Naruko, snarling, hadn't known about this part. Standing to her feet, she got the information about these poor girls from Ten's mind. Reaching into her pocket, she pulled out a silver medallion. Shutting her eyes and gently pressing her lips to the medallion, she said, "I call upon your name, Lady Artemis. I ask that you rescue the poor girls in this small island country and accept them amongst your hunters." Everyone besides Team 11 blinked, wondering what she was going, until the sound of a horn could be heard and the medallion glowed. When it stopped glowing, Naruko had a smile on her face as she said, "Artemis has taken almost all of the children and most of the females away from this village until Gato is dealt with." Eyes widened and Tazuna asked, "How are you so sure?" Naruko giggled and responded with, "Go check if you don't believe me." Tazuna, Tsunami, Inari and Kakashi all got up and went to do so. An hour later they came back with wide eyes and Tazuna asked, "How in the nine hells?" Naruto, playing with some robotics, said, "Artemis is the Greek goddess of the hunt and the moon, meaning she can do things others can't." Inari asked, "Why would you do this?" She, looking up at him and spotting his cold and hurt eyes, felt her heart call out to him. Tapping into her psychic power, she floated the boy over to her and sat him in her lap. Nuzzling him gently, said, "Because justice demanded it and I never ignore her calls." Inari, confused, asked, "Why are you nuzzling me?" She, smiling softly, responded with, "Your heart called out to mine's, Inari-chan, and I also refused to not answer it." Inari smiled hearing this and nuzzled her back. Ino, laying on the couch, asked, "Will you sing a song, Naruko-chan?" Naruko, blinking, asked, "Do you four want me to sing?" Anko, walking down the steps without her coat, followed by Ten who had her hair down and Yukumo who had her artistic supplies, said, "Yeah, Foxy-chan, sing us a beautiful song with that angelic voice of yours." Naruko, smiling softly, amplified her psychic powers and encompassed all of wave in it. Shutting her eyes, she summoned her guitar and said, "This song is for you, hubby Heim. Run to You by Lacey Sturm. I don't own. You tell me I'm the one holding you back. And something about how far we're off track. Well, all I hear is your heartbeat loud and strong. And I just want to wrap you in my arms. But I'll let you go, if that's what you want. But I hope you know my love won't stop. You say it's not true and you call me a fool. But call out my name, I'll run to you. I know you, I know your eyes so well. And I know you're not sure of yourself. But something made you restless years ago. Till you forgot that I'm part of your soul. But I'll let you go, if that's what you want. But I hope you know my love won't stop. You say it's not true and you call me a fool. But call out my name, I'll run to you. I've always believed in you. You used to believe in me too. Remember the day that you turned away? It killed me to lose you. It killed me to lose you. But I'll let you go, if that's what you want. But I hope you know my love won't stop. You say it's not true and you call me a fool. But call out my name, I'll run to you. I'll run to you, I'll run to you. I've always believed in you. Run to you, I'll run to you. And 'cause I love you, I'll let you go, if that's what you want. But I hope you know, my love won't stop. When she opened her eyes again, she blinked as the amount of hearts in the rooms. Apparently her little song for Anko had made everyone swoon hard. Anko was literally floating off of the floor from hard she was swooning. Selena inside of Naruko was even swooning as that song not only pulled at her heartstrings, but started playing them like they were guitar strings. Inari, having used the song Naruko had just delivered as a lullaby, was slumbering peacefully in her lap. He wasn't alone in doing this, as a snow-white rabbit had apparently been attracted by Naruko's voice and song and was cuddled up in Inari's lap. Naruko, ignoring the other reactions, cooed at the adorable scene happening in her lap. Geek Naruko in Konoha cuddling with Amelia noted that the rabbit would most likely become another of their little monsters. Tsunami, snapping out of her swoon-induced state, cooed at the adorable scene. She was quickly followed by the rest of the females in the room, including Anko. Kakashi started to giggle like a pervert as he had just gotten some images for Jiraiya to include in his next book. Tazuna was in too much of a relaxed state to be a pervert. Sasuke was in the corner brooding like an emo. Sai was actually wiping tears from his eyes as that song and this scene had stirred up long dormant emotions inside of him. The next morning Naruko was spoon-feeding the rabbit which she had named Bree while a clone was trying and failing to get Inari to take off his silly hat. Anko was off training Kakashi's team as the screams of agony could already be heard. Ino and Ten had went with Tazuna to his bridge and was guarding the old drunk at the moment. She and Yakumo had stayed to keep Tsunami and Inari safe. Kakashi, of course, was with Tazuna as the man didn't want to be seen as a lazy bastard, although it was already too late. Inari, swatting the clone's hands away, said, "I'm not taking my hat off, Nei-chan, so give it up." The clone pouted and asked, "Are you sure?" He nodded and turned to Yakumo, who was watching with amusement in her eyes. Naruko, wiping the mouth of the rabbit, picked her latest little monster up and nuzzled the bunny. It, nuzzling her back, liked its new master much more than the man with the big sword. Naruko, reading her little monster's thoughts, blinked and gasped as she was holding a replacement bunny that had been raised by Zabuza. She then shrugged as Bree was her rabbit now, and nothing, not even that eyebrow-less overcompensating wannabe demon, would take her away. If the no-browed bastard tried, she'd send him on a first-class trip to hell. She blinked when Inari asked, "Can I hold Bree?" Naruko cooing handed Bree to Inari and gained hearts for eyes when her new little monster chirped and nuzzled Inari. Yakumo also had hearts in her eyes, as this scene was too adorable for her to resist, not that she tried hard. Tsunami was in the same state as the two kunoichi, as this scene was something that made all females coo. Naruko, shaking her head, turned to the door and asked, "Why are you here, Ino?" Ino, walking in, said, "Sensei wants to know if we're all up for a training session." Naruko, nodding, turned to Yakumo, who nodded and asked, "When?" Ten, walking in, said, "An hour from now." Naruko, hearing this, blinked and asked, "Isn't she still training Team 7? Ino, snorting, said, "Not for long. Their cries of agony are dying out." Yakumo, sighing, asked, "Why must our sensei be so bloodthirsty?" Naruko, snorting and grabbing her gear, said, "We'd have her no other way, Yakumo-chan, and you know it." Yakumo, Ino and Ten all giggled and said, "You're so right." Inari, now holding the confused Bree, asked, "Can we come along for this training session, Nei-chan?" Naruko, scratching her head, really considered it, and was about to say no when Selena said, "Take him along. It gives time for a geek Naruko to cover Bree with your patent-pending monster cream. Plus you can teach the little brat how to fight for what he believes in." Naruko, turning to Inari, smiled and said, "Yeah, you can come along, Inari-kun, just don't get on Anko's nerves." Inari nodded with stars in his eyes. Bree, twitching her whiskers, was used to piss off Ninja, mainly the man with the big sword. 2 hours later, and Inari, taking a break from his training, geek Naruko had started him on watched as Team 11 worked on their jutsu and skills. He was amazed at the many jutsu he watched the 4 genin kunoichi put out like they were party favors. Bree, being lathered in the cream her new master was coating her in, was shocked when said person literally stopped a wall of those sharp pointy things by lifting her hands up. Ten, having used her most powerful weapon jutsu on Naruko, cried out in frustration and said, "Damn it, Naruko, that was my most powerful jutsu." Naruko, with her hair up in a ponytail, blinked and asked, "Really, Ten-chan?" Ten nodded and said, "I feel like the weakest member of the team, even with Yakumo-chan being the newest member." Naruko, hearing this, felt bad for about 2 seconds until she gained a brilliant idea. Smiling, she asked, "Ten-chan, have you ever found out what your elemental affinity is?" Ten blinked and said, "Before I left that team I found out it was Earth." Naruko cheered and said, "Excellent." Ten, confused, asked, "Why is that excellent?" Naruko smiled and responded with, "It's excellent as I have an Earth affinity and have plenty of jutsu to share with you." Ino, walking into the clearing with a coughing Yakumo, asked, "What about us?" Yakumo nodded but didn't speak as she was too busy coughing. Naruko, looking at Ino, said, "You most likely have a wind or water affinity, Ino-chan. Yakumo-chan is easy as she has a minor fire affinity." Shiai, smiling, said, "I can help all 3 of you, well maybe. If Ino-chan has a water affinity, Anko-sensei will have to help you." All 3 females nodded just as the screams of Team 7 picked back up, but somehow even louder. Naruko, turning her head in the general direction of Team 7, said, "Sensei must have figured out that the Haruno was trying to fake being worn out to get out of her training session." Ino, shaking her head, said, "She really needs to learn doing things like that, only makes Anko-sensei punish them." Sakura's screams for mercy was then heard and Naruko said, "Nope, she'll never learn, thus she'll never be a powerful kunoichi." Ten had something to say but spotting Inari said, "Inari-san, cover your ears for a moment." Inari, blinking, did as she asked. Ten then said, If she doesn't shape up soon, she's gonna end up as someone's. Naruto, making sure that Inari couldn't hear them, said, I'm pretty damn sure her horrible parents want her to be the of the Uchiha, as they're always pushing her towards him. Ino, nodding, said, my dad told me the same thing. Apparently Sakura's mom is the worst case of gold digger in the world, as she only wants Sakura to marry extremely rich or powerful people. Yukumo, shaking her head, said, that's really sad and I kinda feel bad for her. Naruto, picking up one of Ten's kunai, said, yeah, well, hopefully Anko-sensei knocks some sense into her. Until then we can only train, as we have an eyebrow-less bastard to battle in a few days, and I for one plan on kicking his. Inari, uncovering his ears, asked, what now, Ne-chan? Naruto, giggling, said, now we see if the cream I applied to Bree worked. Everyone turned to the Snow-White Rabbit, who was chewing on a shuriken. Everyone blinked, spotting this, and eyes suddenly widened. Ino asked, how in the nine hells is she doing that? Naruto giggled and said, the cream is working, as Amelia chews metal all the time and lately she's been breathing ice like a dragon. Everyone gained wide eyes, and Bree, finishing the shuriken, chirped, wanting another one. Ten, quickly snatching up all of her weapons, said, my weapons are not chow for your little monsters, Naruto. Naruto, giggling, pulled out a bag of iron pellets and gave a handful to Bree. Said Rabbit happily ate the pellets, really adoring her new master. Lola Senju, bringing you the 8th chapter of Naruto Namikaze, the Demon Lord Pokegirl. I'm editing this at 2:30 in the morning, coming off an all-nighter. So I'm significantly tired. This chapter is the beginning of Wave, which will be 2 chapters long. So the first person she's gonna change is Ino. Do you guys and girls want Haku to live, and what should happen to the Kubikiribocho? Do you guys and girls want Naruto to use a signature jutsu on Gato and his army? If so, what type, for example genjutsu, taijutsu, ninjutsu, etc.? Do you want everyone's least favorite emo Avenger killed off, and do you guys want any guest appearances from characters from other shows or even another story? So let me know via review or PM what you think. Oh, and here's a sneak peek at the first chapter of Resident Naruto. Chapter 1. Change in the Forest, Hyper Hybrid Awareness. Our story stars in a forest that literally radiated death and was so dark the night could take pointers. This forest is located in the outskirts of the village, hidden in the leaves. It's been properly named the Forest of Death, and many people fear it. Right now this forest is being used as the second part of a yearly exam to test groups of genin, otherwise known as rookie ninja, to see if they're worthy and ready to become chunin. So far the exam had only been going on for 9 hours, yet the forest had taken several lives already. We zoom into a clearing in the forest where a blonde-haired, blue-eyes boy was glaring at a black-haired boy with blood-red eyes as the boy burned his arms. Off to the side, unconscious, is a pink-haired girl. The blonde-haired boy had 3 peculiar whisker-like marks on each side of his face and tan skin. He was dressed in a orange and blue jumpsuit that could make the sun cringe from how bright it is. This boy is our hero and focus, Naruto Uzumaki. The black-haired boy is Sasuke Uchiha, and he had just betrayed Konoha for Orochimaru of the Sannin. The snake-like man had promised the Uchiha the power to kill his brother, but had demanded that Sasuke kill his teammates. Sasuke had knocked out Sakura easily, as she was a fangirl and pretty much useless. Naruto had put up a fight and had been winning until Sasuke had used the gift Orochimaru had given him. The tides had changed and Naruto's arms had literally been ripped off by Sasuke, who was laughing with glee. Orochimaru, watching from the trees, chuckled and said, well done, Sasuke-kun. You don't even have to kill them now, as the forest will do it for you. Sasuke, still laughing, said, it feels so good to finally be rid of the Dobi and the fangirl. He, turning, asked, can we go now? Orochimaru, chuckling, said, yes, let's. He then grabbed Sasuke by the shoulder and vanished in a swirl of leaves. Naruto, watching the two leave, growled and started trying to think of a way out of this mess. He blinked when a voice he had heard only once said, damn, I get blocked from you for 10 minutes and you end up knocking on death's door. Naruto, growling, said, it's not my fault, Kyuubi. If Kakashi Baka and the village weren't so biased and loved kissing the traitors, I might have stood a chance. Kyuubi sighing said, Brat, there's one way out of this, and you'd better pray to whatever gods you worship that it works. Naruto snorting said, I've long given up hope that any gods give a shit about me. Kyuubi, ignoring what Naruto said, closed its eyes and started trying to talk to its old friend. At first nothing was happening until suddenly the entire forest became so cold the genin could see their breath. Naruto, feeling this cold, asked, What did you do, Kyuubi? Kyuubi, opening its eyes, said, Brat, get ready to test your little theory as you're about to meet a titaness firsthand. Naruto eyes widened and he blinked when a voice that sounded too heavenly to be real asked, I wonder where Kurama-kun is. I heard his voice but I don't see him. Naruto, setting his eyes on the owner of said voice, felt his face burn from how hard he was blushing. Standing in front of him was a woman standing at 6 feet even with long wind-swept black hair. This hair framed her heart-shaped face perfectly. Her eyes were a shade of teal that he had never seen before. She had large 36DD cup that were covered sublimely by the dark green shirt she had on. She had a toned and tight stomach that would be abs. Her arms were lean but power-packed. Her lower body was just as gorgeous as her upper body and was wrapped in a black knee-length skirt. She wore no shoes reveal her perfect feet. This titaness, looking around, blinked, spotting Naruto. Walking over, she leaned forward and asked, Hello little one, can you tell me where Kurama-kun is? Naruto, laughing, said, So his name is Kurama. Yeah, he's in my stomach. She blinked several times and asked, What do you mean? Naruto, sighing, explained what he meant. When he finished, she was looking at him with pity shining in her eyes. Kyuubi, already knowing what Naruto was about to say, said, Don't you dare say it, you bloody idiot. Naruto kept his mouth shut. The titaness, turning, asked, Hey Jilheim, what do you think? Naruto and Kyuubi both blinked when in walked a woman with black hair, green eyes and tan skin. She was dressed in something Naruto had never seen before, but Kyuubi had. This woman is Jill Valentine, wife of the titaness in front of Naruto. She, walking up to Naruto, stared him in the eyes. She did this for 5 minutes before saying, He's worthy, Selena. The now named titaness smiled and turned to Naruto and asked, How would you like to be saved? Naruto, narrowing his eyes, asked, What's the catch? Selena blinked several times before she said, The catch, as you say, is that you'll have an insatiable thirst for blood and. Naruto and Kurama both blinked and Naruto asked, Is that it? Selena, shrugging, said, Also you could transform into a woman, become a vampire, werewolf hybrid, and disease-ridden zombie, human fusion, or even a winged dragon. Naruto and Kurama blinked several more times and Naruto asked, Which one is most likely? Selena shrugged and responded with, I'm the titaness of all monsters and queen of all vampires, plus the night. There's no telling. Naruto, hearing this, sighed and looked at Sakura. His mind was instantly made up as he said, Do it. His eyes widened when a pair of fangs sunk into his neck. His vision then went black for about 5 seconds before a brilliant array of colors and scenes flashed before his eyes. His blue eyes bore witness to many events and various monsters, including a monster with a ton of eyes. His vision then came back and he found himself staring at the trunk of a tree. He then screamed as an insane amount of pain flooded his body. Selena, having just drank some of Naruto's blood, picked him up and gently started to rock him in her arms.